I'm Dave Thomas, and today I am building the Phantom Blue model rocket kit from Estes rockets. This is a fairly quick to go together rocket, and you can build it in less than an hour and have it ready to launch soon after that. So we'll go ahead and open this up, make sure we have everything. The nice thing about this is it's pre-painted. All you have to do is build it, add decals if you want, and it's ready to go. So inside our instructions here, we have a parts list. So we have our body tube, and it's already got the launch lug glued onto it. It also has its shock cord anchored already. There's a little bit of glue on mine here. You can probably just remove that with a thumbnail if you need to. Alright, then we've got some self-adhesive decals. And then in the small parts package, we have the fin can and engine holder in 2 halves here. We have our parachute. That is a nose cone base. Right, that's our engine retaining cap. Our nose cone is over here kind of hiding under the decals. Right, then we have 3 fins, and this square is actually a clear decal that will be used as a reinforcement on the launch lug. I will clear most of this away and we will get started. Now the first thing I'm going to do is skip down here to the nose cone for just a moment, and that way we can have it drying while we're working on everything else. So for this they recommend using some tube type plastic cement. Alright, so this type here. And what we're going to do is first just take this and make sure it fits, and it does. Alright, so with that, whoa, kind of pressurized there. Always have some protective surface, even if it's the instructions there, because glue will tend to do that. Alright, now we're going to put a nice even bead of glue here, all around the inside. Now you want it to cover in a ring, but don't get so much that it's dripping. Then you can melt the nose cone. Alright, so now we're going to put that base piece in here, rotate it back and forth a little bit, and this will get it nicely seated. Okay, now I'm going to hold this for just a few seconds, and then we can set it aside. Okay, now we'll go up back to the engine mount and fin can here. Now you can use the same tube type cement that I used on the nose cone. Personally, I like to use a brush-on type cement like this. Now, this doesn't work too well if you have to fill any spaces and there's a little bit of gap in the nose cone and the base that you do have to fill. So it's better to use the tube type for that. But where you're joining smooth faces to each other, this works better and you have more control. Okay, so first, we'll just take this and we're going to apply a layer basically over all these edges, but not down into these little notches here. Okay, so any place that's got a, if you look at it in cross section there, these top edges are what we want, including the little nubbins there. So just run that there. I'm going to run that here. You carefully don't get it down in the threads, but you do need it along the edge. Alright, and then we'll just take the 2 halves and mate those together like that. Okay, so it should look like that when you've got it all nice and aligned. Now check and make sure if you've got some on the threads, there's a little bit there. You can take a tissue and just wipe that out if you do it quickly. Okay, the rest of it shouldn't be a problem. Okay, so this too we're going to wait a little bit with and then take the fins on when this glue has dried. Now I've used 2 little clamps here to hold this together while it's drying. I'm just going to set that aside. And now we can go to the first step in the second main part here where we add the reinforcing decal. And so that's this little guy here. the trick to doing this is to get it into the folds of the edges here. Now I've just washed my hands to kind of minimize fingerprints. You won't get rid of them entirely, so try and handle this by the edges as much as possible. All right, and I'm trying to center it in both directions on this. Now I'm not pressing the edges down yet. I'm going to press this down in the middle so that we get good adhesion to the launch lug. And I'm going to take my fingernail and kind of crimp that down along the edge there. Now this one they put a lot of excess glue on and there's not a whole lot you can do about it. I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to take my fingernail and crimp along the edge, force it into there. And then once you've got that, you can smooth out the rest of the decal on either side. Okay, and this is just to help reinforce things, so if you get a wind gust while it's on the launch pad or something like that, it doesn't just tear this back out. Okay, so I'm going to set that aside, and we're still waiting for glue to dry on the fin can. Glue is dry on the fin can, and now I'm just going to test fit the fins and make sure they don't grab or anything like that. Okay, so we can just go ahead and put these on all around. And what I'm looking for is anything that's tight. That one's not quite glued there. I'll have to let that dry a little bit more. Okay, so something like that. And actually I can go ahead and glue this. I'll just need to reclamp it once we get on there. All right, but be more patient than I am. Go ahead and make sure your glue is completely dry. Now, again, in the instructions, they're showing a tube type cement, and if you're going to use that, you're going to apply it to the underside of this little ledge here. The drawback to this that I found is sometimes you'll get it on there and push forward and it'll get stuck like that. The glue grabs too quickly. Okay. Now, there's a way to avoid that, and that's to use this brush-on type cement again. And so here, I'm going to go ahead and just mount all the fins. I'm going to go ahead and put a clamp on that just to make sure it doesn't come off while we're doing this. Okay, I'll just put on each fin in turn. Okay. And yeah, my glue wasn't quite dry down there either. Alright, even us veterans do get impatient every so often. Alright, so I just clamp that down again. Okay, so now what I'll do is take my brush-on cement. I'm going to do this, I'm going to use my instructions as protection. Now I'm going to dab off a lot of the cement. I don't want this running or dripping. I do want enough on there that it will kind of adsorb by capillary action into that joint. Some of these have even finer brushes, and you can just get it down in there. Now you can see some cement going along there. Once it dries, it's not very noticeable. Now you can also use this in the same fashion that they show in the instructions. But since this stuff tends to dry really quickly, it too can result in grabbing of the fin before you have it all the way up. So just be aware of that. Most of the time it goes in without any problem. But I have had cases, especially with newer Rocketeers, where they're a little bit slow getting the fin on and it ends up grabbing. And then it's really hard to get the engine retainer to work right. Now I will let this completely dry before we go on to the next step. While we're waiting for the fins to dry, I'm going to move on to the parachute, and we can get it assembled and attached to the nose cone. So just carefully cut the bag that has it. Alright, and go ahead and open this up. Alright, now the way they show you how to do this in the instructions is you want to gather up all of the shroud lines here. You should have 3 loops of shroud lines, and I just hook those across a finger or two. And I'm going to find the center of the parachute sheet and grab that with thumb and forefinger. And when I pull these tight, all of the corners should be in about the same spot, like they are here. Okay, now to do it like the instructions, you'll take these loops here that you had around your fingers. You're going to pass those through this eyelet here. And this can actually be a little tricky because they want to go inside. There we go. Alright, now you're going to take the loops together again. Come on, loop. Like this. Alright, and now you can, once again, go ahead and check it. Make sure you're not too all tangled up here. Okay. And if that's still where you want them, then what you can do is you pull this loop out like this, and you can either flip the nose through it and pull it down and tight, or you can pass the parachute through it and then pull it down and tight. I'm not going to do either one of those. Alright, but that's how they show it in the instructions, and that pretty much permanently attaches your parachute to your nose cone. Alright, now if you've seen any of my videos before, you'll know that I don't like to do that. I like to have a little bit more versatility. So here, once again, I'm going to open this up, find all my shroud line loops, alright, and straighten that out again. But now I'm going to use a snap swivel. Okay, now you can find this just about any place that you find fishing supplies, and the size of it doesn't really matter as long as the snap open loop is big enough to fit the nose cone, and when it's closed it can freely move about. Okay, so if that's hanging up at an angle or something like that, just get a little bit bigger one. Okay, this one's going to suit my purpose. And so now, just like we gathered up the loops to go through the eyelet, you're going to put them through the round eyelet on the swivel side of the snap swivel, like that. Alright, open those back up, and once again you can go ahead and check and make sure that you haven't lost your place there. So if one of those corners is way out of place and you have to move the shroud lines back and forth until you get it even again. Okay, so now I'm going to open up that loop. I'm going to take the entire snap swivel, pass it through the loops. Okay, and I'm going to pull those loops downward, like that. So here's my snap swivel. Loops are down there. And I'm just going to pull that tight. And that gives us a nice clean knot there. Alright, once again I'm going to check and make sure nothing has shifted. If it has, you can simply loosen this and try again. If it's where you want it, then take a little dab of either white glue or wood glue and just place it directly on that knot. And it's just a little tiny bit. All you want is enough that you can work into that knot so it doesn't come undone. Okay, so now let's say that you want to go out to launch, but it's a really windy day. You don't want this to get carried off into the next county on the parachute. You can then snap off your parachute, snap on a different one. All right, so maybe you use a 6 or an 8-inch parachute rather than the 12 that comes with it. Maybe even a streamer. All right, or on the other hand, maybe you want to have a really soft landing and you want to put a bigger parachute in. Okay, same thing. You can snap this off, put in another one very easily. Now the other thing this does is that almost all parachutes, as they're coming down, they're not perfectly aligned with all the shroud lines. There's always some imperfections, and so it causes the chute to twist. Now if you have the swivel in here, that relieves a lot of that twisting effect. If you don't, in the worst cases, it can get all twisted like this, and it will actually collapse the parachute so it doesn't work anymore. Okay? That's pretty rare, but at least theoretically, if not always in practice, the snap swivel helps alleviate that. Okay. The other thing we can do now, because we're still waiting for glue to dry, is make sure we've got our decal all the way down there. Okay, and we can take the shock cord now, and we're going to tie that next to our parachute if you tied the parachute on. All right, if you did the snap swivel, you can just take it off for this for the moment. All right, we're going to tie a double knot or 2 half hitches into this. All right, you want to pull that from multiple directions so that knot does not come undone. And then if it extends out beyond here, you want to cut it back. I usually cut it back to about 1/2 centimeter here, about that much. You don't want it right at the knot or it'll come undone. But we don't want it to get caught between the shoulder and the body tube, and that can cause the ejection system not to work, and it comes down like a spike rather than on a parachute. And then, like we did with the shroud lines, just take a little dab of glue. All right, white glue or wood glue, don't use the plastic glue for this. And just kind of work that into the knot to help it keep in place. All right, now for the moment, I'm going to go ahead and leave this open so that I don't accidentally get the shock cord into the glue that's going to hold the fins on. The glue on my fin assembly is dry, and so now I'm just going to dry fit it first of all into the aft end of my body tube, and that's the end that has the launch lug closest to it. Now when this is assembled, we want to make sure that the launch lug is between 2 of the fins, otherwise there can be interference on the launch pad with the launch rod going through there. Alright, now if it fits okay, the instructions indicate using the tube type plastic cement again here, and you can. My preference though is to use a gel type super glue because it's actually better for mating non-alike substances like cardboard to plastic here. Whichever case you prefer, we're just going to run a bead of glue right along the inside here. Okay, and then we're going to take our fin can, we're going to plug that in there and twist it as we enter. Okay, and again, make sure you align it so that the fins are on either side of that launch lug. And once again, we need to wait and let things dry. My glue should be dry down in the body tube there. So now we'll go ahead and assemble everything. So if you went with my version and used the snap swivel, go ahead and hook that on now. Otherwise your parachute's already attached. Okay, and then we'll just slide the shock cord down inside the tube here as much as we can. You'll have to leave a little bit there so we can get the parachute done. Okay, now some people like to leave the parachutes off until they're actually ready to launch. I'm going to go ahead and store mine inside, and so I'm going to fold my parachute till I get a triangle of about that size. And then I'm going to take my shroud lines about halfway down. I'm going to pull those up into the triangle there, and I'm going to take the 2 edges and fold them over the shroud lines. So now we have kind of a spike here. I'm just going to fold that over, and I'm going to fold the edges over again, so now we have kind of a cylinder. Alright, and now I can stuff in the remainder of the shock cord, followed by my parachute here. And this should all smoothly go together. If it's catching somewhere or it's just not going in, pull it out and try again, because if it's hard making it go in, it's going to be hard coming out again. Alright, then we go ahead and attach the nose cone there. Mine's kind of dusty. Okay, and then do a shake test here. Just shake the Alright, and if your nose cone comes out like that, you need to put a little bit of masking tape on. And I would start with like half a circumference or a third of a circumference here. Just put that onto the shoulder. Alright, and that'll just give a little more friction. Okay, put that on again. Again, do your shake test. Alright, that looks pretty good. Okay, the only thing left to do are the adhesive decals. And the first thing we're going to want to do here is wash our hands very thoroughly so we avoid the fingerprints. Alright, I've washed my hands. I'm going to go ahead and start applying decals here. Now the main one, the Phantom Blue, you'll have to decide which way you want it to go on your rocket here. And this will actually be the trickiest one. Now I recommend that you do it on the side opposite the launch lug so that it will be facing out on the launch pad. And the trick to these is to just not let a lot of it touch at once. So go ahead and peel that off carefully. Okay, and now we're going to just kind of set that like there. Let's see how close to straight I got it. That's actually pretty close. But if you, at this point, you can usually gently peel it back up again if you haven't pressed anything down. Okay, so I'm happy with the way it is here. Except I got a little bit of orange dust in there. Alright, so go ahead now and just seal it down with your finger, first in the middle and then move out to the edges. And unfortunately, the way the adhesive is on these things, if you press it down, it's stuck there. If you try and peel it up again, it'll peel off the finish. And if you're thinking, well, what if you use the detergent water trick that we use with vinyl decals? Now, if you don't know what that is, don't worry about it. If you do know what it is, it won't work on this because this is not a waterproof surface. Okay, now if we look on the box, okay, these little blue ones go out on the fin tips. Okay, you don't have to do any of the decals if you don't want to. That's completely up to you. And then the Estes ones you can put anywhere you want or not at all. Alright, so the fin tip ones, the plastic fins tend to attract dust, so be sure to remove dust as you apply these. Okay, so something like that. Now I've got a little bit of overhang. You can take a model knife, hobby knife here, and just gently cut that overhang off. Okay, and just keep doing this all the way around. So here's my finished Phantom Blue. Alright, we do need to put one other thing on here, and that's the engine retainer. We'll just screw that on. Okay, I hope you had as much fun building this as I did. Have a great launch and a safe recovery, and please stay tuned for more of my videos.